Hello, everyone. This is Angel Aviles with 30 Inspiring Women, brought to you by Living Firme. And today I have Jazmin Ontiveros. She is the director of video at Mitú. I met Jazmin a couple of months ago, and she is a superstar. Thank you so much for joining me. You are an amazing new head. I start all these conversations out in the same way, and that's just asking how you grew up, what the culture of your home was like, and what kind of influences got you to the point where you're at today?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be interviewing with you and talking to you. It's so crazy that you talk about like how I grew up, because you were one of those people that me and my sisters looked up to. I'm the youngest of three sisters. I grew up with a lot of tias. My mom has a lot of sisters and cousins, and I just grew up around a lot of sisterhood. Like, I always talk about, like, that is, like, my number one thing. My sisters are a lot older than me. When they were, like, 15 and 13, I was, like, 5 or 3. So they were, like, my second set of parents. And I just feel, like, just very lucky to have grown up around, like, a strong community or, like, a tribe of women that, like, kept it real, or were there to, like, cry on their shoulders, or I just would not be where I'm at if it wasn't for all of them. But in terms of, like, the environment I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in San Francisco in the Mission. It's a lot different now, similar to, like, Echo Park and a lot of different neighborhoods. They're really changing. But I just grew up around a lot of art, a lot of lowriders, a lot of good Mexican food, Salvadorian food, just proud of Latino culture, but also, like, how it blends with American culture. So, yeah, that's kind of how I grew up. And I think because I was the baby, I was very forced to, like, you're going to go to school and you're going to get a career. You're not going to turn out like the rest of us. So even though there was a lot of pressures and peer pressure outside of school, like, in my house, like, it was very clear, like, no, you're going to go somewhere. So I don't know, I just feel very fortunate about how I grew up. Even if I didn't have a lot, I had so many people just putting me up on game and, like, just looking out for where I was going to end up.
I feel you on that. So where did you end up going when they said, oh, you're going to go to school and you're going to get an education? What ended up happening from there?
During high school, like, I just always got really good grades and all that. And at the time, like, no girls have ever, like, moved out of my family until they get married. Even my sisters did the same thing. Like, no one really moved out until they got pregnant or married and all. The very traditional Mexican side of things. Even though it was very contradictory, like, you're a strong woman, go to college, like, that's why we moved to this country, get a career, don't depend on a man. But, oh, on the other hand, like, you can't move out until you get married. So it was very, like, contradictory. So when I was applying to colleges, I just didn't even think about leaving home. So I applied in the Bay Area, and I got really lucky that I got accepted to UC Berkeley. Like, I didn't get accepted to a lot of other schools, but for some reason I got accepted to Berkeley, which is, like, an amazing school. So I went there, and I commuted and all that. And then while I was there, I was like, you know what? I think it is worth kind of, like, rebelling a little and trying to move on campus. It's so crazy that I had to see it as, like, rebelling when I was moving to college. It wasn't like I was moving in with my boyfriend or something, but yeah, eventually, like, I moved to campus, and then I think once I got that taste of freedom, that's when I started to be really interested in documentary filmmaking. I just kept seeing, like, at Berkeley, like, the Chicana Studies program and African American Studies program. There's a lot of, like, student organizing and protesting, and there's just a lot of stories to tell. And I just thought it was so crazy that, like, no one is watching these stories. So that's when I was like, maybe I want to do documentaries, and that's kind of where I got the idea from. But there's no film in the Bay Area. There's no industry. There's no schools. There's nothing. So that's when, I think when I got that little taste of, like, living away from home, I was like, well, what if I moved to LA? And that, you know, that's, like, the home of film and all that. So I applied to USC to get my master's, and I got accepted. My parents didn't know what USC was because, you know, they lived in the Bay. They know what Berkeley was and all that, but they were like, what's USC? Like, they had no idea that it was, like, a really good school. I think once my aunts and my sisters and people that know, like, they always really supported me and, like, told my parents, like, no, just let her. This is a good opportunity. So that's kind of how I ended up in LA. And honestly, like, film. It was just, like, this thing that I randomly kind of got interested in. I was really always creative and all that, but I just never thought that film was something I could even do. I never saw anyone around me do it. So yeah, I kind of just took that risk and was like, we'll see how this goes.
So you ended up in LA at USC.
Yes.
Girl, okay.
Yes.
So don't even, okay, I have to bust you out the spot for 5 seconds. You have people killing one another over trying to go to Berkeley and then get into USC? Please.
Okay. That's the thing though, like, I just really believe, like, when you're a good person and you have good intentions, like, good things happen to you. And I just always felt like I, kept my head up. I was very focused. And I don't even know how I ended up at places like Berkeley and USC. Like, yes, I got good grades and I worked hard, but at the same time, it was a little bit, like, serendipitous at the same time. Like, not to, like, undermine my work or anything like that, but it's all just kind of magical how it happened, because I would see these, like, my fellow colleagues or students, and they were just, like, working so hard, and I didn't put that effort, and I never really hung out with, like, the best crowd, so I don't really know how it all happened. There was, like, no plan. It was all just, like, keep your head down, work hard, and see where you end up.
Well, I mean, it is magical, but that is also a part of this kind of broader storytelling that's coming out of this podcast. I mean, I've had incredible people on this podcast. A lot of them they're not in touch with their own story and the significance and the inspiration that their individual story offers.
Yeah.
So once you got here, what was the impetus for you to go into Pero Life as opposed to going into a more traditional filmmaking industry?
Yeah, so even before all the great things of like Me Too and Pero like there was those years of like the grind. Because LA, that's what it is, even though I went to USC, I graduated immediately, like that summer, it was like, how am I going to navigate like this? Because, honestly, film is like for rich people. It's for rich white people. That's just how the way this industry has always been set up. So even someone like myself, like, oh, first generation, like Latina, Chicana, USC, UC Berkeley, like great things to have under my belt. It was like 2013, after the whole like recession, the economy is starting to pick up. I worked at Whole Foods. I worked at the fancy alleys, like taking pictures of purses and jewelry. Like I worked on sets doing random things. It was just like the hustle, like the things that you go home and you're like crying, like, is this going to be my real life? Like, when I was at Whole Foods pushing carts, like, and at the same time, my parents didn't really support me being in film. They didn't really it's not that they didn't support the film part. I think it's just like, we want you back home. Like, why are you in LA? Like, come home. Like, you have a house. You don't need to be struggling. And there was like these two tensions of like, should I go back home and be with my family, or should I like stay here and like, oh my God, this is like reality. It's not easy. So it was a lot of that before I ended up at a place like Pero like, or BuzzFeed in general. And I think it was like 2 years after I graduated, or 3 after just kind of doing random freelance work. I just randomly applied. At the time, there was no Pero like, it was just BuzzFeed. And digital video was like a new thing. And I feel like I give a lot of credit to digital video in terms of really opening the doors for Latinos and Blacks and Asians and Middle Easterns and LGBT, like, and women. Like, I just don't feel like traditional film really lets people fresh out of college just be able to get into it. Like, you need money, you need equipment, you need a crew, you need actors. Like, it's so much. And digital video is very like, just do it yourself. Like, pick up a camera and put yourself on camera. That's why a lot of YouTubers and people have just been able to like blow up. So I do give a lot of credit to digital video, and in terms of like the accessibility, like just opening up the doors for more people. So when I ended up at BuzzFeed, there was 3 Latinos. It was me and Curly. At the time, Curly was a receptionist and the janitor. That was it. Like, it was like the 3 of us. There was nobody else. And then like slowly, like another Latina was hired and another one. And then we kind of just looked at each other and we were like, we should make more Latino content, because BuzzFeed was very just like white or just, generic content that's not really about any identity. It's like people try whatever. And there was like a small group of like African American people at BuzzFeed that were making Black identity videos, and there was Asian American producers at BuzzFeed making Asian American content. So we're like, we should do it too. And I think after like a year of doing that, BuzzFeed was like, hey, do you guys want your own page? Do you guys want Pero like this page, and you guys name it whatever you want, and we named it Pero like. So I think it's once again like when you're just doing good, and like you, like in that case, like we just wanted to see ourselves in videos and represented, and we would be in brainstorms like, oh, my mom would say this, oh my god, my mom too. Like it felt like working with your primos, and because it was such out of such good intentions, something good came out of it. That's kind of how I ended up at a BuzzFeed. And then because I was working on Pero Like and all that, that's when Me Too was like, hey, we're building a video team and we love your work. Do you want to join? And that's how I ended up here.
I love that you talk about the difference between traditional film and digital and the disparities that, this one genre that does represent, for the most part, a certain demographic and the exclusivity in that industry. I mean, we have like J-Lo and we have Selma, women that really have pushed in traditional film and have done great jobs, and I celebrate them 1,000%. But the volume that I see coming out of this generation represents more closely the volume of our people in relation to who we are in this country and on the planet.
Yeah.
23 countries speak Spanish. And it's kind of odd that we've been so poorly represented over the years in media, but I really, really am encouraged and excited to see your generation changing that.
Growing up, like, that's why, because earlier you're like, I didn't really recognize what a meaning Mi Vida Loca had, but on women and Latinos in general, but that's why it was like, we had like 5 films to like be able to go to. Especially like for me, like a film where like girls are friends and they're just dealing with life stuff, and Latinas, like you never ever really saw that. It was like in that phase of like the 90s, and then it skipped like 20 years, and now I'm glad that it's like coming back, and like at a bigger capacity too.
Well, I love that too, and I love the project that we did together about friendships and about the evolution of friendships and how it was one of the funnest things I did last year.
It was so fun.
Laughed. Yes, it was so funny, and to be friends with someone for so long. But I do enjoy the fact that for the most part people relate to that portion of the film, and that's a universal theme. I'll get emails from people from Ireland, from New Zealand, and they relate to these characters because they understand what it's like to live in an area without a lot of resources, but still be dealing with adolescence and still be dealing with all of those common lines. Get past the style. And it's funny that the style is back in style and it's being celebrated, because I remember being told how ugly I was and what an embarrassment to the Latino community this was. And it's been really interesting to see your generation take it in and love it and treat it like a gem. It's an honor to me.
That's awesome.
So what's on the horizon for you? Where are you going? Where do you anticipate you, Jazmin, being in the next 5 years?
I think right now what I'm sort of trying to, what I've been doing the last 2 years is just really growing the video team. And, we went from like having like 3 video producers to now we have like 15. So I think I spent a lot of my last couple of years just like sharing the knowledge that I know in like digital video and just how to really like make videos shareable and how do you make people view your content. And it's just different types of storytelling when you're dealing with digital, because people watch things on their phone, and just like all that knowledge that I had, I spent the last couple of years helping these new producers just grow and groom. And I think I really have that in me because I'm the youngest in my family, so I didn't have a baby sibling to help grow, but I saw how my sisters did that to me. So I love to just like pass that on of like, let's all just help each other grow. But I feel like a little bit of like a single mom right now, but it's time to focus on me. And yeah, I do feel like I've been, like the last year, I've been thinking more of like, well, I need to go back to working on my projects. And just even at Me Too the last year, I was working on a series with the girls from Belladonna. They bought a lowrider, and they were like, "Hey, we bought a lowrider. Do you guys want to document it?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah!" Like, I grew up around lowriding because of my brother-in-law, and so I did this like 5-episode. It's just a shorter series. Like the episodes aren't that long. Just documenting the process of two women trying to enter a male-dominated world like lowriding, especially something that's kind of, I don't want to say it's dying down, but a lot of these younger generations, it's like, are they going to be interested in lowriding? Is this something we're going to keep passing on? And we ask a lot of those questions, and it's also about sisterhood, because at the end of the day, it's like they go through so much, but at the end of the day, it's like as long as you have your best friend by your side, like it doesn't matter what you're going through. So that, because of that project, I've just been thinking a lot of like just what future projects I want to work on. And so I think I want to keep going in that lane of like making series. And film, I'm still a little scared about, because I'm like, oh my God, I can't even imagine making a long one piece thing. But I think I want to start off with like mini short films and just seeing how those go. But I definitely think in 5 years I'd love to just have my own company and just, I want to be like these Black filmmakers like Ava DuVernay or Shonda Rhimes, just really continuing to share our stories, and just being able to like create my own company to then, groom and develop like the next generation. But I think you always have to be like the first one to kind of go into it, and it's a scary world. Because there aren't really any Latina directors out there. Like a lot of the people I aspire to be like are African American women in film. So I really just hope to be that for Latinas and just like really just kick down all those doors, or just create our own opportunities too. I just feel like right now Latinos it's a scary place to be, because it feels like, are we going to like be able to tell our stories, or is it going to be seen as something that's marketable? Because right now it's like, oh my God, there's so many Latinos, and it's always like tricky. So I just want to be in that place to be able to like continue to protect our stories, but make sure that we're still making like big hits and series that are popular and movies and all that. But it's always a fine line.
That's brilliant. I just love how you are creating something new, but at the same time, you're really a curator. You're a curator of culture and a creator of content. You have this incredible balance of really having this certain group of ingredients, but whipping them together so that it's palatable for the generation that you're serving.
Yeah, and I love the word curator too, because even just when we were building the team at Me Too, it was very like, I'm Mexican American, so it's like that's the only Latino experience I can really share, especially like the West Coast experience. And it's like, it's like, let's make sure we hire someone from Miami, someone that's Cuban, someone that's from New York. You really have to like recognize as Latinos, we can't tell every story or every experience. Just build that tribe of fellow filmmakers that like, where you can still work together and help uplift each other's stories. But it's like pass the mic to that person when you want to tell that specific story versus, I can't tell every Latino story. And I think that's very important for the future of Hollywood to understand. And I feel like that's where it's always been the biggest mistake, that it's like it's seen as one thing, very Mexican centric. And it's like, no, there's like so many stories. And that's what I really look up to Black media right now, because they are telling those stories. It's like they have superheroes. They, they still have entertaining stuff on like Bad Girls Club. They have the serious stuff like Fences. It's a variety of stories. And for Latinos, it hasn't really been the case. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
I agree, and I think one of the interesting things that has happened in the African American community, and I see it happening more now in your generation, the African American community was separate at a certain time, but then through the 60s and 70s, a group of really incredible orators and leaders were like, no more of this nonsense, and there was this unity and identity, as opposed to being separated by the very, very tiny nuances. Especially, for Latinos, we do have these commonalities. We were all colonized by the Spaniards.
Yeah.
We all have indigenous roots somewhere. And for many of us, we also have the African influences.
Yeah.
And so to be a part of this huge, huge community and still not recognize one another as brothers and sisters has worked to our disadvantage.
I think it's always like celebrate our differences, because I do love our differences. Like one of my really good friends, out of just being in this industry, like she grew up in Brooklyn and she's from New York and I'm from the Bay Area, and we grew up, we're culturally very different, but the way we grew up is so similar. So we bond and we laugh about like the same things, and it's like, still celebrate those differences, but just recognize when the strength you have when you do unite and get together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this interview, for taking the time to chat with me and to share your experience. And I just believe that the best is yet to come for you. You're brilliant.
You're
talented. You're a woman of great conscience, and I appreciate you just being in this world.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks. Honestly, like, I give all the credit to just all the women that helped raise me, even if it was in the house or on the screen, like people like you. Like, I'm just a product of a lot of amazing people. I take no credit.
So sweet and humble.